I'm very
Same.
nervous about public speaking.
Same.
It freaks me out.
Same.
This is only the 10th podcast that I've done ever, even though I started it 2 years ago. So just to give you an idea of how nervous, I usually am.
It's
Um, but but yeah, so I mean, I don't know. Yeah, it's weird. It seems to go better this way if I overthink, right?
do you have a lot
So,
of Virgo in your chart? Or
I
Gemini?
do. Yeah, I do. I think I have
Okay.
like 3 or 4 placements.
There you go.
So yeah, but normally, so I'm a Pisces sun, I'm a Libra moon, and a
Oh, okay.
Capricorn ascending. So,
Mhm.
but I do have like 3 or 4 placements that are Virgo. Yeah.
Probably your
Um,
Mercury.
yeah. Yep. And so yeah, I overthink a lot and I talk a lot. And so
It's
I'm
okay.
gonna do my best to try to
It's
pull it in.
okay. I like it when people engage. I feel like it's a lot harder when they just put me at the center stage and I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, but you're not engaging with me. It makes it a little bit harder. I think it's the
Yeah.
Libra in us that I'm like, I want to socialize, I want to
Yeah.
connect. Yeah,
Yeah. I want it to feel like a conversation. So,
absolutely. And I'm
um,
nervous too. I don't like to be,
really?
and yeah, that's why I'm
Uh,
always behind camera. I just barely started putting myself in front of the camera, actually.
I said to my wife this morning, I said, I
Mhm.
like that JJ is actually putting herself in front of the camera more before the readings. And she
Oh, thank
said,
you.
oh, that's probably because all these people are trying to pretend like they're her. And she's trying to make sure like this is me. Like don't
Yes.
fall for the imposter, whatever accounts.
Also, yes.
And yeah, and I said, I have a feeling, and I
Mhm.
said that I said I have a feeling that like maybe you didn't have like enough confidence to really do that much, and now you've been
Yes.
building that up. And I
Yes,
said the exact same thing.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, that's
Yeah,
awesome. I think it's great. And I feel
thank
like
you.
when you get an imposter or two or three, which I've seen you have, like I
I had
feel like
many.
I laughed and I told my wife, I said, I feel like that's how you're like, I think I made it. Like
That's
if
what my
people are trying
son
to
told
fake,
me.
right? If
Yeah.
people are trying to fake like that they're you, does that mean you've made it? I don't know?
I don't know, you know what? Everybody's telling me that. They're like,
Mhm.
"JJ, if you don't got haters or people wanting to be you, then it just means, that you haven't made it yet. If you have them, you made it." I'm like, "Okay, I guess I can
Yeah.
take it that way because it
Yeah,
gets
it's
frustrating." Yeah, it does.
yeah, I can't even imagine like especially because of you providing a service that's so like out there on social media, right?
Yeah.
It's so easy for someone to just generate a profile in like 10 minutes and start trying to rip people off. So I can't even imagine like,
Yeah, it's not
you
so
know.
much for me, or like I tell my husband, it's not so much my reputation. It's like, even though it is, but it's so more like the people. Because
Right.
people that come and get readings, I look at them as like myself. That's why I started my journey.
Right.
So when people come for a reading, I always remember the time where I was also stuck in life or I didn't know what to do. And so for someone to just come and scam and just take their money and not take their situation seriously, then I feel like it's not okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah.
So you said like obviously you were in a position at one time, everybody is, right? Where you're like,
Yeah.
oh man, I'm really lost and I need guidance and all that kind of thing. So like how did you how did you go from that to where you are now a little bit? Like did you start when you were younger? Have you always been drawn to it? How does that
Interestingly enough, I've looking back because I really had to sit with that question because
Mhm.
I really love your question, and I was like, well, when did it all started?
Mhm.
So I was when I was young, I always had this interest, this fascination with the other world. I was always into like ghost stories, or I always happened to be in the circle of groups that they all thought they were witches.
Right.
Somehow, always, even through high school, like, I was always in that group.
Mhm.
So, it was always, like, a fascination, but I never really dived deep into it or anything like that until I found myself in a situation which was, after high school, where I was studying to be I went through so many phases. All I knew was all of them had in common that I wanted to be a healer. I wanted to heal people,
Sure.
but I was going at it in a more practical way. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do registered nursing. Then I was like, I want to do speech pathology. I was like, and then I want to do social working. So it's all, you can see it's all healing, it's all wanting to help others. But for whatever reason, it was always no, something happened. It was always delayed, delayed, and delayed until one day I got into the university that I wanted to. And I was so excited. I was happy. My first day went great. My second day, I literally felt like somebody pulled me out of the class. I couldn't be there. I couldn't
Hmm.
sit there. And I went out and I remember I cried in the I don't know what's it called, but it's like the benches outside. And I was like, I wanted this so much, you know? I'm like, why am I not happy here?
Yeah.
And so I went home and I took 2 years off because I was like, it was during Lionsgate portal 888 of 2018
Oh,
when this
wow.
happened. I know it was big. Um, and I told my husband, I was like, you know what? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm gonna be home. I'm gonna stay home with my kids. My husband was like, fine, that's okay. I'll take care of everything. Don't worry about it.
Hmm.
And then, so that happened. Then my husband went out of country. I'm pretty sure you heard the story, but he went out of country to get his residency. And so they had told us, oh, he's going to be out for 3 weeks. And come 7, 8 weeks, he wasn't coming. And I was like, oh my God, there was a lot of delays and things like this. And again, I went back to spirituality. I went back to tarot because I always had tarot. I was
Hmm.
gifted one actually when I was 16. And I went back to tarot and I found myself again finding comfort, finding guidance, using my intuition, and everything worked itself out. And that's when I started my YouTube channel. During
Okay.
that time that I really thought I was like, what am I gonna do? I'm a stay-at-home parent. I was like, I gave up my school. And it was just like also an identity crisis because I was like, I didn't know what to do. And so I that's how I started my YouTube channel. It was always spirituality that got me through the most difficult times in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting, so that wasn't that long ago,
Mm-mm. It
which
wasn't?
kind of messes with me a little because the first time, so I
Uh-huh.
came across you because I have a very small spiritual community that
Okay.
I hung out on Twitch a lot. There's a lot of Twitch like tarot readers and stuff, and that's kind of where I started to seek out some like-minded people because I felt like there wasn't people around here locally that I could connect to.
Okay.
Um, and then I started a community that was sort of like the misfits who didn't really get along well in some of the
Mhm.
mainstream tarot stuff on
Mhm.
Twitch. And so just a small group of us, a core group, and one of them had gotten a reading from Soulwork, Aaron.
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
Yep,
Uh-huh.
and then said, "Oh, well, I've gotten a reading from Erin, and, she does this podcast or something with
Mhm.
JJ," and, like, so she introduced me to your videos and said, "There was this video that really reminded me of you should check it out." And so I was looking, before you came on,
Mhm.
and that was actually this month is probably about 2 years since I first started watching videos that you put out.
Oh, no.
And then in May of 2020, I had reached out and actually got a reading, from you. And so it was interesting, and it was um it's kind of strange because I didn't realize how like what a big part of my journey the last 2 years like your readings were going to become,
Mhm.
and with my wife as well. And there's been some interesting things that have happened along the way. But like I said, I watched that first pick a card and I went, oh my god, I've watched a lot of pick a cards from a lot of different people, but this one, I mean, it literally felt like you were doing a personal reading for me.
Oh.
And then that's what made me kind of keep coming back. And every time I would watch something, I was like, oh my god, this is really just spot on, like freakishly spot on, detailed, right? And I know that most of those readings are meant to sort of, generally apply and you take what applies and you leave the rest kind of thing. But I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, everything applies down to like very specific stuff on
Yeah.
the regular basis.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was very interesting. But I was able to find a lot of like-minded people, from doing that and connecting, and that's grown quite a bit.
Mhm.
Um, which then gave me the confidence to start sort of discussing the topics that I've always been into for since I was very little, um, openly and not caring what people think. And then I
Mhm.
realized, oh my God, there's people that are right here, like
Mhm.
parents of children that played football with my kid, who
Mhm.
said, "Oh, I'm really into at the football games." Someone came up to me and said, "I'm really into this stuff, but I have no one to talk to about it," and they're all hush hush, right?
Yeah.
And they were, like, scared to talk
Mhm.
about it. Everybody thinks you're a freak if you're into this, and I was like, "I am a freak, but I'm just owning it, and,
Mhm.
it's fine. It's whatever. Everybody's unique." And, so I realized that I had a lot of, people locally who were into stuff, and once I once I started putting that out there, I it was like, "Oh my god, there is a way more than I ever thought." I just it's like they didn't exist until my perception changed, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden it was like poof. So and people that I thought would be freaked out by it are
Mhm.
not. I have seen it cross over into my business where they know what my
Mhm.
beliefs are
Mhm.
and they're like, "That's pretty cool,"
Yeah.
they're not like, "Oh, okay, you're that guy." Um,
You're that guy.
yeah, so I mean, I told one of my clients before, I said, which is totally unrelated
Mhm.
to this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
I said, "Oh yeah, I pulled cards for a year ahead, probably like 6 or 7 months ago, and just
Mhm.
so you know, so far everything is dead on to what I pulled. So if
Mhm.
that's true, I'm predicting the next couple months are gonna be like this." And they didn't really believe in that stuff until
Mhm.
the next 3 months came, and then they're kinda like, "Hmm," you know?
Oh, that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, so it's really cool. I've gotten acceptance in areas where I didn't think that I could. That makes
Mhm.
sense?
Yes, it
And
does.
so, yeah, it's really interesting. When you started to do this, because like you
Mhm.
said, you kind of abandoned, everything that was sort of defined who you were,
Yeah, an
right? And
identity,
started to
yeah.
go with this. Yeah, your identity, exactly.
Mhm.
How did that go with, like, family and friends? And, like, did you
Um,
struggle or
well, when I started everything, all YouTube. My husband did not know about my YouTube. Everybody lies because my husband, everything was done like very Scorpio, hidden. Nobody knew nothing except my son, my oldest, because he's the one that helped me kind of put everything up and showed me how to do it. But everything was under the radar for a whole year. When I decided to be like, okay, this is what I'm doing, and I'm like, it's growing. I'm like, people are needing the help. Like you said, it was a beautiful community. People were so loving and accepting, and that's the whole reason why I also started behind camera because I was like, I can imagine what people will say, the comments. I was like, I can imagine the comments being
Mhm,
like horrible, and I was like, I really don't need that type of emotional damage, if you will,
right.
right now while I'm going through my transformation. But when I did decide to come out, my husband was like, a little bit, he was like, okay, kind of like, I don't believe in any of it, but you know what? You do you. Like,
Right.
he's like, you do you, and then see where it takes you. That's it.
Mhm.
Like, he didn't give me any bad comments or anything. I was like, okay. And he didn't limit or anything like that or nothing. My father, on the other hand, he was a little bit more resistant just because he is a little bit more Catholic.
Mhm.
So he was like, oh, okay, so you're not a God worshiper or whatever. And I was like, it has nothing to do with that. I was like,
Mm.
it's just, my spirituality. I'm not defining it with any religion.
Yeah.
It took him a while, but he also did a lot of stuff behind closed doors. But he's a Libra, so he's very much about what other people think.
Sure.
Yeah, so but he did his things behind closed doors. So he was
Mm.
just like, how is it gonna look like? Because he was still very much wanting me to be a nurse. So he's like, what are you gonna tell people? What are people gonna say that you're a nurse doing this, practicing this? And
Mhm.
I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they think. I'm like, you know.
Yeah.
My mother, she was very open to it. She didn't give me any resistance whatsoever. She's not very religious herself, so she was very open. She's like, "Well, that makes you happy. You do you."
Mhm.
Um, I got a little bit more resistance from other family members that they are very religious, and I was a little scared for them to find out.
Yeah.
And so it took me a while. I think they found out like what 6 months ago.
Mhm.
It all started happening. I was, like, over here behind closed doors, like, trying to keep it like, people not to know,
Yeah.
and then, little did I know that everybody already knew. My mom's like, "Everybody knows, JJ," and I was like, "Oh, thanks a lot for letting me know." But they didn't say nothing. They're just like, when they come, they just look at my stuff, my altars and things like that, and they're like, just nothing. They just look at it. Yeah,
They
but now
probably
we
weren't
joke.
very surprised, right? They're like, "We kind of already knew,
Yeah,
but"
you were always the odd one.
I totally can relate to that. I totally can
Yeah.
relate to that. Yeah. No,
But
I
other
totally
than
get that.
that, I haven't had any bad experiences with people. I feel like you said, I do open up more now when I go to my son's school and things like that.
Right.
People do ask me like with the beads and stuff that I wear, the crystal
Mhm.
beads are always like, "Oh, what is that?" And then I start telling them, and they're like, "Yeah, I know I have mine, but I don't wear them in public." And I'm like, why? And they're like,
Yeah.
because so much judgment. They associate you with doing witchcraft or devil worshiping or things like
Mm,
that. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but it's I don't know. I'm a I feel like I'm a very confident person when it comes about like to me, my own stuff, like in person, but I feel like I understand why people feel like that because there is a lot of people who do get a lot of resistance from other people. Not everyone is blessed to have a community that they can talk to or people that they can trust. So it does make it a little hard.
yeah.
Absolutely. And I feel
Yeah.
like that is when the podcast people who are on Twitch, YouTube,
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier for others to relate. Yeah.
Yeah. I have a theory that I've talked with multiple people, but I
Hmm.
found that a lot of people who do this kind of stuff, like when I started my podcast and when you started doing what you're doing and putting yourself in front of camera, there is a lot of like fear that I had to work through just speaking up about what I believe and
Hmm.
expressing that, let alone just being publicly facing and all that kind of stuff. And I told my wife, I said, yeah, this is probably because all the people who are doing this stuff and are now trying to spread that message and help people without being afraid are
Hmm.
probably doing so because in a past life we probably have been put to death for it and we're scared
Yeah.
like we're like, oh my god, I don't want anything to happen to my family, like I don't want to get
Yeah.
hurt. I'm not me personally,
Hmm.
I'm very like, I don't care what happens to me, but if you touch my family, like
Family. Yes.
different situation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's
um
another thing. That's I'm like, it's not so much about me. It's like what people are gonna say. Well, my kids, are they gonna get any shit? I don't
and
know if I can cuss. I'm sorry.
you can totally cuss.
Oh, okay, okay. I don't know if they're gonna take shit from other kids at school, things like this, you know?
Yeah. No, of
Yeah,
course, yeah.
yeah.
People, kids, you worry about your kids like getting made fun of because it's something
Mhm.
different and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I Up until what was that 5th grade, I think? Up until 5th grade, I went to a I'm sorry, a Catholic school.
Okay.
It had nuns. I mean, they did the whole like, hit your knuckles with the ruler thing and
Oh,
like they're
okay.
very strict and whatever. And I basically kind of got asked to leave because I questioned a lot. Not that I didn't believe necessarily what I was being told. I just questioned
Mhm.
a lot. Like I have a lot of
Yeah.
questions, right? I got in trouble for like putting the communion in my pocket because I didn't know what to do with it. I'd never been to communion,
Yeah.
and I put it in my pocket, and it got all covered in lint and stuff, right? And then I
Oh.
went up to a nun after service and was like, "Hi, like, what do I do with this?" "Oh my God, you put the body of Christ in your pocket," and it was like
It was a
flipping
big
out.
thing.
Yeah, I'm like, "I'm sorry, I'm in 5th grade. I don't know what to do,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I did question a lot because I always had this feeling that there is more to the story than I guess what we know, right?
Absolutely.
Um, that led me to a number of different like searches for what I believe and kind of separating out the spirituality from the religion, which I feel like a lot of people
Mhm.
have kind of like leaned
Yeah.
towards.
Yeah.
um Even down to just studying like very
Mhm.
generally as many religions as I could put in my brain,
Mhm.
and keep my sanity, and coming to a point where I'm like, I think they're all the same.
Mhm.
I've talked about this on podcasts before, but language, when babies are born, they all speak baby language, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And then they don't start becoming, say, Spanish speaking or English speaking or Japanese speaking until their environment sort of influences them, but
Mhm.
initially they all speak the same language. And I said, I feel like interpretations of God are much the
Yeah.
same way. Every region, every whatever has all have their interpretation of the same thing,
Mhm.
and but it's all the same. And to me,
Absolutely.
God is just a word to describe that connective source that brings us all together.
Absolutely.
um and it took a while to get there for me.
Mhm.
But anytime I bring that up to people, like, you're like, yeah, totally, like, it's common sense, right? Like a lot of people
Mhm.
that I know are like, what? They think that's a little weird. And
Yeah.
it's just what I've always felt, from the beginning. So
I
I try
agree
to
with you.
share it. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
cool.
do because I always felt like why was he always unreachable? At least and I always felt like he was like God was very unreachable. Like you had to
Hmm.
go through certain saints or angels to get to him. I was like, why couldn't I just talk directly to him?
Hmm.
That is something that my dad taught me. He's like, you can just talk directly to God. And I was like, okay. So I always had that issue with I never fit in with religion because I was like, I want to have my own relationship with God, if you will, or with
Mhm.
source, with spirit, because people will call them many different things. But like you said, um, I don't know. I could never fit in. No.
Yeah, well, and, like, once you realize I think once you realize where what feels at home, like,
Mm-hmm.
God, what a relief that is. Like, when I stopped
Absolutely.
digging into everything because I was like, "This is what I figured it out." Like, I know what I believe, and it makes sense now,
Mm-hmm.
and I sort of threw out that conditioning that everybody
Yeah.
else wanted to teach me.
Mm-hmm.
It was like, "Oh, thank God." And then I was like, "All right, now I need to tackle, 25 other things that are on my plate," right? Because it's like, as soon as I
Absolutely.
got through
Yeah.
that, there's the next thing lined up. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, I think a lot of people, kind of struggle with that. And I think at the end of the day, I think I tell people all the time, I don't know that it really matters as long as you believe in something. And if you don't believe in anything, then believe in yourself above
Absolutely.
everything else.
Absolutely. And that's okay. People get so caught up in that. And I'm like, just do you. What works
Mhm.
for you? What motivates you? What inspires you?
Yeah.
You know?
Everybody's journey is unique.
Absolutely, and we're no one to judge anybody's journey,
Yeah.
because your journey is gonna change because you grow, you ascend, and so your consciousness also evolves and it changes, and with that is normal that your journey will change, your beliefs will change, your
Mhm.
perception, your vision. So don't ever judge yourself or anyone else just because they're like, "Oh, at some point I resonated with this and now I don't." That's okay, that's their journey, it's not yours.
Yep. And I think it's really healthy too. I tell people a lot that we're here to
Yeah,
be both, teacher and student. And so you
absolutely.
should do both. I've
Yes.
met some people who are like, "Oh, I'm not here to learn anything." And I'm like, "Lesson one." Right? Like,
Right there.
right?
Yeah,
Um,
and I always say that on YouTube too. I'm like, we're always rotating between being a student and a
yeah.
teacher. There's
Yeah.
gonna be times where you're gonna be the teacher, and there's gonna be times where you're gonna be the student, and honor those, honor them, honor those
Yeah.
2. Yeah.
Well, and the other thing too is something that I was told by a spiritual mentor that I had was like recognize that every single person that you talk to, it does not matter who it is, even in passing on the street, every single person that you connect with is a opportunity to teach and to learn. And
Absolutely.
sometimes that, I mean, whatever, sometimes the beggar on the street, that's asking you for money, like there's a karmic contract there, right?
Mhm.
And that it's an opportunity to help or to learn or to whatever, you
Yeah,
know.
absolutely.
So I always find that like really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
And I love when people make connections, like that,
Mhm.
and you realize it. What's cool to me
Mhm.
is when you start to really see the different synchronicities and like when you become aware of how it all works,
Mhm.
and then you like start to see it, and you're like, oh, okay, and it starts to just sort of like lead you along a little
Yeah.
bit, like breadcrumbs, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's when it gets fun. That's kind of where I've been the last
Mhm.
like couple years, where I'm like, all right, now that I'm starting to figure out exactly how this works, now I can use that to my advantage,
Absolutely.
right? So
Yes.
it's taken a minute to get there, but
It's about being in the flow, because when we're in resistance, we don't see the signs, or when we're not present. That's why spirit is always like, ground yourselves,
mhm,
because if you're not present, you're not gonna be able to see, like you said, the little breadcrumbs or the little signs, the little synchronicities. And when we're
yeah,
not in the flow, it also makes it a lot harder. There's a lot more resistance there. Yeah. But yeah, like you said, everybody doesn't matter. People from all walks of life have something valuable to teach us. There's always a reason, and I always say this on YouTube as well. There's always a reason why we encounter certain people.
mhm,
Yeah, nothing is by mistake. At least I don't believe so.
yeah.
Mhm.
Sorry, you probably have
It's
seen me
okay.
like hit this Kleenex a couple different times. I
It's
don't know why, but
okay.
since this new energy kicked in, my
Mhm.
allergies and sinus stuff is
Oh,
like
mine
out
too.
of control. It's
Yes.
literally kicking my ass every day.
Yeah, it's a lot of releasing.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm like my wife this morning goes, "How do you feel today?" And I said, "I feel really good, like, my energy is good." And I
Mhm.
said, "But" and this is gonna sound strange, but I said, "I'm completely stuffed up, but my nose is running." I know that doesn't make sense,
Yes,
right?
yes. So you
But
feel
both are
congested.
happening at the same time, and I don't
Yes.
understand why like, how that works, but
There's a push and pull, that's why, in a collective
yeah.
level.
I'm like, "Ugh,
Absolutely.
ugh." Yeah, it's been
Yeah.
it's been crazy. Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about that. So one of your recent readings that we watched, and
Mhm.
then you typically do different like Reiki energy stuff around the portals and things
Yes.
like that. So for people who aren't super familiar with it, like can you maybe just overview a little bit about the portals and like how that works and where we're at now and maybe like what the next one is?
Yes. So portals are usually when we're talking about like 11/11. So
Mm,
November 11th, December 12th, or like the one that we just had, which was February 22nd, 2022. That was like the biggest one. Everybody was talking. So they're usually portals are like that. So March the 3rd, April the 4th. The Lions Gate is another big one that I think in the community everybody knows about.
mhm,
So the last portal, or these portals generally are, they're doors for us to use to manifest. Whatever it is that we want to manifest, we use that energy. We have to use it very wisely because they are powerful. And a lot of people usually think like, oh, because I manifested the day of the portal, I should receive my manifestation like the next day. And I'm like,
right.
doesn't work like that. It takes like 6 months for you to get it, because there's a series of events that will happen, right? When we know in manifestation, you set your intention. As soon as you set your intention, a lot of people are like, but I just asked for this. And all of a sudden, this is like my favorite one. Okay. So my husband, he did a big one last year's portal, which was 11/11. He wanted a new job. And so what happened? He lost his job.
Mm,
And he's like, JJ, you told me to use this portal to manifest. And I was like, yeah, you're making room for it. Spirit is like, you don't need that other job. And he's like, no, but this, he was having that moment, the resistance.
mhm,
And he got a new job, a better job. It took him a while, but he did. And I was like, there you go. That's your manifestation right there. But a lot of people, that's what happens. Like we manifest during these portals and we tend to be like, or we feel like we're losing something,
mhm,
but it's just we're making space. That's what the portal does. And the biggest one that we had for February, it was all about choices. I don't know if you've been seeing it in your life, but there's
mhm,
been a lot of decisions that I feel like a lot of us are making during this portal. And I feel like it's all from a place of intuition. This is where the collective is at right now. The collective is in this place where we are making difficult choices, and they're choices based on intuition. And those are the hardest choices to make. I always tell people it's not like a logical decision, right? Where we're always like, oh, so if I do this or if I do that, then that should lead to this, right? Like 2 + 2 is 4.
right,
Intuitively, it doesn't work that way. Intuitively, you don't know. You're stepping into the unknown with faith. That's all you're doing. In this portal, I feel like it's pushing all of us to do that. Many of us are as well wanting more freedom, freedom of expression. We're connecting more with our truth. We're also not, a lot of us are not staying quiet anymore. And we're seeing this in many different ways that's going on in the world and also in our personal lives. We're like, we're done with this. I don't want this anymore. I want something different. A lot of people are going on their own. They're starting their own businesses. They're just being more creative. They're trusting themselves more. They're stepping into their power, their truth. And that's the biggest shift with this portal now. How you said you feel congested, but yet your
mm,
nose is running, because a lot of us, there's a little bit of resistance still. And so spirit is like telling you, where's the resistance? So where's the congestion at?
right.
Is it like in your, for example, it was in your head or your forehead? Okay, so what are we, your mind? There's something with your
Mental
mind there.
block. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But spirit is like, but it's still flowing, it's still running. So if you just let it flow, if you let it run, you will be okay.
Yeah.
But we get caught up in the congestion, right? We get caught up in the blockages that we have. And so there's that push and pull energy there that's going on in the collective. And the new portal that's coming up will be the 3/3. And that portal is all about your vision. I want you guys to think about like tarot, for those of you who do practice tarot, right? The Three of Wands, the Three of Pentacles, the Three of Cups. So this is all about a new vision. It's about creative expression. It's about birthing new things. Also, if you work with Ascended Masters, that would be great as well. But anything you want to expand on, that would be
Mhm.
kind of like where your intention should be with this portal that is coming up.
A lot of
Mhm.
growth then,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I've seen that and I've noticed it too. So like for example, in the last, I don't know, 6 months, 8 months, something like that,
Mhm.
like I've noticed that you've expanded, even just what you're doing into, there's candles and
Yeah.
obviously you do Reiki. and
Yes.
some other like products and things like that, but
Mhm.
it's expanding sort of your brand, into
Yeah.
other ways to help people, which I think is awesome.
Thank
And
you.
I've also seen, you're talking about the creator like energy that we had. I
Mhm.
think COVID, and the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff, and people being able to work from home,
Mhm.
and businesses seeing like, oh, I can actually have some people that work from home, right? I think
Yes.
that really was a catalyst to push people. And
Absolutely.
we've talked about it on past podcasts,
Mhm.
during the pandemic,
Yes.
of okay, this is the physical thing that's happened. COVID is happening, right? But there's
Mhm.
actually a spiritual purpose behind what's happening to the collective too. This is sort of the
Absolutely.
catalyst for it, right?
Mhm.
And moving that forward. And definitely I'm seeing that. I've seen more people leave their jobs in the last year,
Yes.
complete career changes. Like I've always
Mhm.
wanted to do this, whatever it is, and just going for it. And I'm like,
Yes.
that's great. I did it.
Yeah.
I mean, I did it last April. I left my job, so I've been on my own almost. At the end of April will be a year since I did it.
Yeah.
And I tried and wanted to do it for so many years before that, and I just was afraid and afraid and afraid. And then I built my business up to the point where I finally could do it.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, probably literally the next day, as soon as I did it, I was like, "Oh my god, I feel so good."
Yeah.
Like, what was
COVID
I so
forced
scared
us,
of,
yeah.
you know?
COVID
Uh,
forced us to tap into our creativity and to think outside the box
mhm,
in many ways, many aspects. A lot of people got divorced during COVID too.
yeah. Well, I
Mhm.
think it shifted a lot of priorities,
For sure.
and yeah, divorce for sure because, I mean, I think a lot of people sometimes if they're in a situation, relationship, whether that's marriage or not,
Mhm.
they're in a
Yeah.
situation, job, marriage, whatever, that they're unhappy, but they're using work or whatever. If
As an
you're never
outlet.
home because you're
Yeah.
working all the time,
Mhm.
then you don't really know how good your relationship is because it's like, well, it's great. We only see each other 30 minutes a day.
Yeah.
And but all of a sudden now you're stuck with each other, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, then you have to kind of like work through some things and figure it out. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've
Absolutely.
seen that,
It's like the security blanket got taken away.
Yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I mean, I know people who were in that situation,
Yeah.
in my own family, actually, who
Yeah.
that was the deal. They never really saw each other enough to realize that they don't really like each other, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's sad, but, I said, "No matter how bad it sucks," I've never ever gone from a situation that was bad to one that was worse, ever. I've
No.
always gone up, right?
Absolutely.
Even if it didn't feel
Yes.
like it, and
Yes,
even
at
if
the
there was a
moment.
dip, right?
Yeah,
Even if
even
there
at
was
the
a dip.
moment. Yeah, you're like, this isn't good. No, it'll go better."
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
it's always worked out, great. And when my wife was with, she's a teacher, so she had to teach from home.
Oh, oh,
She
okay.
does intervention specialist,
Oh,
so she
okay.
works with a lot of IEPs and kids on the spectrum and things like that.
Okay.
And so like she had to teach from home, and that was a little challenging at first because we had to share office space for a bit, which
Okay.
was
Yeah.
interesting. But I said, thank God we went through all of the really like heavy, hard stuff
Mhm.
early, like, in
Yeah.
our relationship,
Oh, yeah.
and it's like, "Oh my god, if we went through this, sharing an office is nothing," you know? So,
Yeah,
it worked out really well, and yeah, I mean, is great, and she definitely we balance each other really well, right?
that's good.
So, you hear twin flames tossed around a lot. I based off of what I know about twin flames, I would say that
You and
that
her
she
are?
is. We're
Ah,
literally balance each other out. If I'm up, she's down, you know, um I really feel like she's, part of me. And but in the same time, we've gone through just we've gone through some shit.
yeah,
Like,
I bet.
like to get where we're at, we've gone through so much stuff to get where we're at. And I mean, we're
We're
still
still
here and
here.
things are good, and you know what I mean?
And that's the thing,
So
you guys grow stronger, you guys, know that you guys have each other's back. So
yeah.
that's good.
Yeah, so, like, I wanna talk a little bit about that because it seems to be a hot topic right now. Again,
Absolutely.
it goes in cycles, it
Yeah,
seems,
it
right?
does, it does.
So, everyone's like, well, actually, it kinda makes sense, though, with what we were talking about with the energy shifting, right? You
Mhm.
have all these people who are like, "Okay, this wasn't working for me. Now I'm out looking for, love again," or whatever.
Yes.
When's that person coming, right?
Yes.
So, talk to me a little bit about that because I think everyone has a romanticized idea of what a twin flame is.
Yes.
And, um, you know, like perfect example. When I met my wife, it was
Mhm.
like honeymoon period for a really long time, right? And
Yeah,
then when we started to go through stuff, it was like really, really strong relationship testing things, right?
absolutely.
Stuff that I wouldn't want anyone else to have to go through if they didn't have
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
And and we got through it. And my wife calls me out on my shit. She's
Mhm.
like, "You're being an asshole." And I'm like, "I am. I'm sorry."
You're
Like,
like, "Noted."
yeah, I'm like, "Okay, all right, harsh, but okay." She's an Aries. She's very like
Oh,
fire and
she's
blunt, and
blunt.
yeah, she's
Yeah.
very blunt. I like that
Mhm.
though.
Yeah,
Like,
we
I,
need that.
yeah,
Yes.
I need that in a like,
Yeah.
man, that kind of that stings a little,
Yeah.
but I kind of like it, right?
Yeah,
Like I need that.
absolutely. You need somebody to call you out on your shit sometimes.
I
Yeah.
do. No, I really do. No, truthfully.
All of
But
us, not just you.
it makes us like the reason why we're so good together is because of that keeping each other accountable and being blunt because I'm blunt,
Absolutely.
okay?
Mhm.
Keeping each other accountable, being blunt, and then like I said, we balance each other out quite well. If
Mhm.
like where she's not super strong on the business sense, I've become very strong on the business sense, and she's more
Mhm.
um, you know, from an aspect of being a teacher
Yes.
of this is how you should look at trying to work this out. And I'm like, oh shit,
Yeah.
I didn't think about that. So we complement, each other really well.
Absolutely, and that's what
Um,
makes it work, right?
mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, but it's never been easy, right? Everything has been a
Mhm.
choice, everything has been work, and it's a choice to be
Absolutely.
together and grow and get through those things. But yeah, so can can you talk about
Yeah,
dispel
and
some of the notion of the it's Romeo and Juliet,
okay.
all the time, right?
Yeah, no, you know what? And I was gonna say that because I was sitting down when I read the twin flame question.
Mm,
Spirit is all like, get the romance out of there, please. So I was like, yes, for sure.
yeah.
Because I remember when I was starting on my journey with spirituality, and then I started to awaken to the journey of twin flames, I was also thinking, like, oh, this is Disney, you're
Mhm.
perfect person or whatever. That's not the case. It's not like I wish I can when people come and tell me and they're like, JJ, I want to meet my twin. I always tell them, I'm like, are you sure? Are you sure for the work that you're about to do? Because I'm like, it's no joke. It's a roller coaster.
Yeah,
And it's not toxic. First of all, everybody thinks a twin flame is someone that it's toxic. A lot of people confuse that with karmic connections. That's not it.
right.
It's not violent, no domestic violence, nothing
Mhm,
like this. It's nothing putting you down. It's nothing that is degrading. It's nothing that is going to make you feel less than. If
right.
anything, the twin flame journey is going to empower you. It's going to help you become the best version of who you are and who you're meant to be because they are your mirror.
Mhm.
They are your reflection. The reason why people say it's so hard is because you have to face yourself.
Yeah,
Your twin, like you said, calls you out. They mirror things and they
absolutely.
tell you you are slacking, you're
Yep.
procrastinating, or there's more. And so they push you. They push you, and that's uncomfortable.
Mhm.
It is. A lot of us don't like the self growth. A lot of us don't like to look in the mirror. A lot of us don't like to take accountability. Your twin is gonna help you take accountability, whether
Yeah.
you like it or not. And that's why a lot of people run from the connection. They're like, no, 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 it's too intense.
Yeah.
But it's you facing you. And the beauty of it is that at the end of the journey, which I don't feel like there's an ending, but with time, you're gonna see that you've become a totally different person. And it's a beautiful thing because, like I said, you are in your power, you stand in your truth, you stand in
Mhm,
your authenticity, you know who you are. It's like you come home to yourself. That is what the twin journey is. And a
mhm.
lot of people think, oh, it's just romantic. It's not. Some people don't end up with their twin.
Right.
Yeah.
And I've always looked at it too as like, any kind of growth, like when you uncovered, divination and things, right?
Mhm.
It's like you didn't discover that, you didn't learn anything new, you're just remembering who you are. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Mhm.
Like even people who go to school for nursing and spend all that time learning nursing, like I believe they probably have been healers, obviously, many times before, and
Yeah.
they're just sort of remembering and pulling down that part that they need.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I mean, listen, there's been some intense stuff. I've done like past life regressions with my wife.
Uh-huh.
And actually, when we first met, was we connected over spirituality, and she was doing, I think it was a level 2. Yeah, she was learning her Reiki level 2, and I had just gotten out of a bad relationship where I ended it because I had a dream that I trusted was going to come true, for the first time ever in my life, and I went with my gut on that, and it did come true,
Oh,
and I
wow.
was so upset and heartbroken about it that she was like, "Listen, I need to practice,
Mm.
distance Reiki. Can I
Yeah.
do that?" And I was like, "Okay." And from the moment, we kind of had that connection energetically, it was like, "Huh, this person seems familiar." Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Um, and then, really the first time that we ever held hands, I was like, "Holy crap." Like I saw like sounds so cheesy. I saw like
No.
literal sparks,
Mhm.
It was really intense. Um, and so yeah, we, connected over that. I'm losing my train of thought. We connected over that energy and
Mhm.
over Reiki, and that's what kind of put us on that path, right?
Yeah.
To be where we are now. And it's funny because you were saying something about how like people look at a twin flame and they think like, oh my god, this is like the one, the perfect person for me, whatever.
Yeah.
If my wife was here, I guarantee you she would have said, I'm the perfect one for you. Say it.
You'd be
Like,
like, "Yes."
yes, honey.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
With that tone, I am.
mhm. Yeah, she would be like, "Say it. I'm the
Mhm.
best thing that ever happened to you." Okay, calm down.
Yes.
But you're right though. Like
Mhm.
it really, anytime that we've ever run into something where we've butted heads, it's
Mhm.
been because whatever we were going through was forcing us to work through that part of ourself that we don't want to do.
Absolutely.
Right.
And like you said, and I always tell people, not everyone, if you do happen to encounter your twin,
Mhm,
really try to do the work because not everybody encounters them.
mhm,
It's a very small percentage of people who actually incarnate together. The twins incarnate together.
mhm,
And so, I understand it's very intense and I understand it's difficult, but really try to look at your twin as literally yourself, you
mhm.
know? Yeah, because there's a lot of growth that comes with it. And you're gonna know who's your twin because the connection is there. Like you said, you feel it, you know it. There's no you see signs about that person all the time that
Mhm,
remind you of them. Because there's other connections too that you're gonna see signs with soulmates as well.
mhm.
But with a twin, it's gonna be intense. It's gonna be like out of nowhere. You're like, wait, I wasn't even thinking about this person.
Yeah.
Why are they showing up? Because twins always show up in your life when you're ready to do the work.
Mhm,
That's why spirit is like, okay, we're bringing this person in. You're ready to grow. You're ready to transform your life. That's why when you meet your twin, you go through an awakening.
mhm.
And some people go through the awakening before meeting their twin, or the twin comes in during the awakening. But it's because you're living a life that is not authentic to you. So your guides are like, you need to get it together because you're not tapping into the best version of yourself.
Right.
And so this person comes in to kind of wake you up. Like you're settling. What are you doing? And so that's why it's hard because it's that paradigm shift, that shift of like, you know what, I was comfortable here or this was my identity for so long,
Yeah.
and this person comes in and you're like, wait, no, it's not anymore. And that's when you
Mhm.
start making all these shifts. And then you're like, I want to push this person away because thanks to this person, I'm doing all these shifts. But it's not the person, it's, the soul contract and the mirror that
Right.
you're wanting to grow. Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah,
Mhm.
God. So I knew my wife before the Reiki thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, when we very first met, we were at a party, and she at the time, so my boys are my step boys,
Hmm.
but I've been around since they were like, I don't know, 2 and 3 or something, right?
They're your voice.
Yeah, they're my boys.
Yes.
So we were at a party,
Hmm.
and her and her husband at the time were sitting like across the room, and I had
Hmm.
walked in and sat down, and I think it was like New Year's or something. And one of the boys was born, the other one was not. And the one who was born, Aiden,
Hmm.
who's on the autism spectrum that I've talked about a bunch,
Hmm.
he left their side, ran over, jumped in my lap, and hugged me and went,
Oh.
"Daddy!" And I was like, "What the?" Right? And I like literally because at the time,
Yeah.
so you know, when her and I got involved, I think I was probably like 24. This
Okay.
was like maybe 21 ish, right?
Oh.
And so I'm 21-year-old me was like, yeah, I don't want a family or anything. So anyway, so
Yeah.
I hugged
Mhm.
him and I was like, uh I'm like, I said to Tim, their dad, I said, I swear to God, I've never met your wife before. I have no idea why your son just jumped in my lap and called me daddy.
Yeah.
I'm like, and I literally, said to out loud, I said, I know I've never slept with anybody here, so like, what's going on, right?
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
and so yeah, like that was sort of like our very first real interaction, right? Which is
His soul
crazy. We
remembers
met through a
you.
friend, right?
Mhm.
And then actually fast forward a number of years, when they moved here where we're at now, Aiden actually said to me, "Hey dad," and I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "How come when we first met you didn't remember me?" And I was like, "I think I did. I just forgot." Or you know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it felt very comfortable. I was very attached to the kids right away. I mean, right away.
Oh,
Just as friends, right? When we were just friends, I
yeah.
mean, I was very, very attached. So, but I thought, how strange, you know, how strange
Yes.
that is.
But kids are more in tune with spirit, so it makes sense that he would just
Yeah,
recognize you right away.
yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah,
very strange, and I
I
thought, well,
love
that's
that
interesting.
story. Thank you
Well,
for
because you're
sharing.
talking about the catalyst of like,
Yeah.
hey, your twin flame's gonna come along because it's like you're in a situation that's not maybe great for
Mhm.
you, which I
Yep.
think that she was.
And it's part of the journey, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, listen, I'm grateful. I'm super grateful that she was able to meet, their dad and all everything that they ever went through because it's what obviously made the boys and made her who she
Absolutely.
is and made them who they
Mhm.
are to this point. And everything, happens that way. So I've never had any kind of
Absolutely.
like, a lot of people are like, "Oh my God, I can't stand, whatever." I'm like, no, I love that person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it was the catalyst that sort of maybe forced us both out of situations because I have no idea if
Mhm.
I hadn't sort of latched on to that family, like pre-made family
Mhm.
situation, I have no idea like what I'd be doing now. I really don't. And I don't think she was super content where she was. And so,
Yeah.
everything worked out. But yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
wild.
You came to wake her up, to be
Yeah,
like, "There's more. There's more to life out there," you know?
yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
is absolutely crazy. So speaking about waking up, right? I
Yes.
know that things go in cycles, right?
Mhm.
And so I feel like we're sort of on the upswing again of um the collective, more people
Mhm.
kind of like coming, to and remembering and getting into this stuff. You see a lot of like old is new. It's like,
Yes. Mhm.
between, using tea, which is really just, herbal medicine, right? That you're
Mhm.
brewing.
Mhm.
All the old arts and all the discovery of, oh, our ancestors did X, Y, and Z. And it's
Mhm.
like we're not there yet, but we're going to be finding out, I think, a lot more
Yes.
over the next couple decades. That will be very exciting.
Mhm.
But so more people are waking up, more people are looking for guidance, more people are um, trying to seek out, right?
Mhm.
People like you to help them steer them in a direction and give them answers and kind of make them unafraid, right?
Yes.
Um, like how has that affected things? I mean, obviously you've seen growth because of it, but do you feel like does it feel different? It feels different.
It does. It feels different. I even see my clientele has also changed,
Mhm,
and I've seen it. It's like, I feel many of us are in a well, on a collective level, everybody is their consciousness is elevating.
mhm.
And a lot of people are now discovering that they are alchemists. They
Yep.
are magicians. They can alter their life. They can live the life that they wanted to live. I feel like people had that conditioning of like, I couldn't, I was limited. Things had to do or be this way. And I feel like people are waking up to that, to their roots, to who they are. And so people are more, like you said, they're coming in with they're wanting reassurance, they're wanting to
Mhm,
know like everything's going to be okay because they are taking more leaps. But there's going to be a lot more businesses as well, people stepping into their power. That's going to be a big one, and
mhm,
people just wanting to be free, whatever that means in their life, because of course that's going to be different for everybody. I always say this, but yeah, the collective is shifting a
Mhm.
lot.
I feel like this is something that I talk about. Like, I like to talk about
Mhm.
a lot of stuff. Like, I love conspiracy stuff. I
It's
love,
really
like,
good.
the really out there stuff too.
Mhm,
But I feel like what's going on in the world right now, right, with
mhm.
Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
I feel like this is going to be a unifying event instead
Mhm,
of it sort of being like, and when I say unifying, I don't just mean like everybody showing support for, people who are going through it. I mean, I've always felt that like people don't want war anymore, regardless of the reason. Like, I don't care. Before there was always justification. Well, this person did this thing, they're evil. We need to retaliate or something because it's the justice thing to do. And
mhm.
I feel like collectively though, people are like, we're done with punishing people for things that have nothing to do with those people. Does that
Absolutely.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like people are stepping more into the vibration of love.
Yes,
Love and
exactly.
compassion. Yeah. It's like
Exactly.
wanting to address certain things from a place of not violence, not from a
Mhm.
place of, aggression or war.
Right.
People are wanting to use different tactics, if you will.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's going to spill over even with our day-to-day conversations with people. I feel like we're going to be more understanding of people's
Mhm.
differences, choices, their own vision as well, which is good. I feel like we need that.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
what's fascinating about that is, my son that
Mhm.
has autism. So what I have read and what I've learned over the last little while
Mhm.
is that typically kids that are on the spectrum, of any kind are seem to be very like heart chakra centered.
Mhm.
And one of the things that he's really just naturally good at is he doesn't have judgment of others in any way, shape, or form. It's
Mhm.
only a filter of love.
Absolutely.
Does he get mad sometimes? Of course he does.
Mhm.
But when it comes to viewing other people,
Mhm.
right? He just has this beautiful filter of love there that
Mhm.
in this wisdom that's naturally like baked in. And
Mhm.
somebody told me once that the reason why you see such an occurrence of autism and other spectrum related things now, so many like it keeps going down to like it's like 1 in 5 or 6 now or something. It
Mhm.
used to be like 1 in 14 a couple years back, is because those kids and those people
Mhm.
are here to help shepherd us into that age of love. Like um they're bringing in souls that are already attuned to that energy
Absolutely.
to help raise it up. And
Mhm.
I when I read that, I was like, that makes a hell of a lot of sense to me. Um,
Mhm.
so I thought it was really interesting. So I do
It
try to
is.
sort of look at it through that lens, right? On a
Absolutely.
regular basis. I try to think like how would he look at this, you know?
Mhm.
It's really fascinating.
It
So
is. I find it fascinating.
yeah. And but yeah, it's interesting. I think if things move and continue to move in that direction, which I think they will, it's like, man, is this the heaven on earth that people talk about? Do you know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like where like people say, oh yeah, when this happens,
Mhm.
it's gonna be heaven on earth. And it's like, isn't that kind of what it is? Like
Yeah.
if we're all working together and we're all like coming from a place of love and not scarcity and not fear, is that not
Mhm.
like what we want, right?
Exactly. In order for
Yeah.
us to do that as well, we also have to know who we are. We
Mhm.
also have to also step into our authenticity. And that's why there's a lot of twin flames coming into union in summertime. There's a lot
Mhm.
of them that are already as well. Spring and summer is going to be a big shift as well in the collective with them because they're going to come in, step in,
Mhm.
and like bring a whole shift as well for us.
It's
Yeah.
like it's really exciting.
It
I know, I
is.
mean, you're sensitive to the energy too, but I tell people all the time, I said, um, everyone was all bummed out because of 2021. And when we came into 2022, I said, I feel like 2022 is going to be one of the best years that I've ever
Yes.
had, but not just me, like collectively. I think
Yes.
2020, it's like espresso. The energy
Oh,
feels like
yeah.
espresso to me. It's
Yes,
really high,
exactly.
like exciting. And
Yes,
people, how can you be excited when all this is going on and look what's going on in the Ukraine? I'm like, I understand, but in the
but
big
there's gonna be a
picture,
shift.
there's
Yes,
something going on.
big.
That's
Yes.
why I changed the name of the podcast to back to the Shift Podcast. It was the first name I picked
Mhm,
originally with I came up with it with somebody who was a Twitch streamer
Okay.
And we kind of parted ways. And I said, well, I don't want to use it after that because it's kind of something that we sort of came up with together. And
Mhm.
then I started getting just a ton of synchronicities over about 3 weeks of, shift, shift, shift. I kept hearing shift, 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 shift. And I
Mhm.
was like, okay, all right, I got it. I'll switch it back.
Yeah.
Um, and I always came up with like different acronyms for what shift would stand for. So it was like sharing human insights for tomorrow, like
It's so
spiritual healing
cool.
through future timelines. Like, I don't know. Either way, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I got it. I heard the message. I'll switch it. Right. So you're
Yeah.
the first podcast under that name.
Hey, what
Um,
an honor.
yeah,
Thank
no,
you.
it's cool. And the one I had before, I was like, it literally was named the IDK podcast, and it was, I don't know, felt cute, might delete later.
Uh-huh.
Little did I realize that I actually like that's exactly kind of what happened. Was
Yeah.
like, I don't know what I'm gonna pick for the name, so I'm gonna name it I don't know. And then felt cute might delete. I'm like, it actually is
We
like
deleted.
gone kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, just crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's cool. Um, I think there's so many more people like the tarot category on Twitch and even
Mhm.
just tarot stuff available on YouTube has grown immensely in people that
Yes.
are like expressing that. And so I want to
Mhm.
talk a little bit about just, what you do. Like I said, I know that you do Reiki. I know that you have candles, right?
Mhm.
And some other things, but obviously tarot is kind of the thing that has really helped you
Yes.
get to where you're at. So can we talk a little bit about what you do? Because you don't read the way that most people read, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you. I hear that
Right.
a lot, which I find it so interesting because I never know what people mean when they say that. So can you tell me what do you mean by that? Like I
Um
don't read like anybody else.
Yeah, so like I had like okay, so there was someone in the community, the one that actually introduced me to you,
Mhm.
gave me a couple things that she wanted to make sure that I asked you, right, when we got to this part of the segment.
Okay.
And I was like, yeah, I think I would have ended up there organically. So one of the things was you seem like you seem like you have a really, really strong connection to not just your guides, but almost like the collective
Mhm.
guide, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Like your stuff, the way that you get messages and the way that you read, because I know a lot of people that just like read one deck. They just pull a
Uh-huh.
deck and they read it, and they pull a deck and they read it, and you mix together cards from different things. And I think I'm kind of
Mhm.
like, okay, so like, what made you decide that? Do you just go off of intuition as you're polling? You just decide, I want some from here because it feels right, or do you have like a plan where it's
No.
like some people
No.
do spreads, right?
Yes,
And
I
it's
don't like
like
spreads.
I don't either.
I don't like them.
I don't even listen. I used to pull cards and do some streaming stuff on Twitch,
Mhm.
mainly like Oracle stuff.
Mhm.
And I don't know. I can't even tell you a little bit of what I've learned of what the cards mean is from watching stuff from you, but I really don't know.
Okay.
Whenever I would do readings, I would just look at the cards and either I would channel information or like see stuff in the pictures like you do,
Mhm.
or I wouldn't. But I couldn't honestly tell you,
Mhm.
like, oh, this is what this is, and this. I never went that far into learning the like hard coded meanings of this is what this is supposed to be.
Ah, okay.
I just sort of would just get messages about it.
Absolutely. I don't read guidebooks.
Yeah.
I did not learn from any book or anything. It was
Mhm,
just intuitively and a little bit of research in YouTube, things like that, when I was starting to dive into tarot.
mhm.
But usually everything that I do is intuitive.
Okay.
Everything to what I pick. That's why sometimes at the beginning of my YouTube, you would see that I would be like, oh, for this pile, I feel called to maybe, I didn't pull from that card, I mean, from that specific set for pile number one, but I feel for you guys, I should.
Mhm.
So it's all intuitive. And yes, I heard a lot of people say that, interestingly enough, a lot of people dream about my channel, which I
Yep.
find so interesting
That
because a
is.
lot of people are like, I find you only through my dream. I found you through my dreams. And I'm like, that's creepy. That's creepy. But they always tell me that they're like, JJ, I dreamt about your channel. And so I just put it on YouTube and there you were. And I
Huh.
was like, oh, okay. Or a lot of people tell me, yeah, you came to visit me last night in my dream. You were reading for me.
Uh-huh.
So it's so interesting how you say it seems like you're very connected to the collective
Yeah.
because I feel like it's my moon in Aquarius
Mhm.
that I feel like because Aquarius rules the collective that really helps me with that. But I feel like it's all intuitive. I can't tell you. It's because I feel like my strongest gift is actually claircognizance, which is just inner knowing. It's
Yep.
just like I'm like I had to do this or I had to do that or I had to pull this, but it's my guides are so even people who read for me, they're like, I can't tell you, JJ. It's just so many people. You're like a phone. People always tell me that, or you're a bridge.
Yeah.
It's like just so many people. As people step in.
Yep.
Sometimes they're spirits, sometimes it's my own guide, sometimes it's other people's guides, sometimes it's their ancestors, my ancestors.
Mm,
And I can read you a little bit about everything without me. I honestly did not. How do I know astrology? Very little. I did not study it.
right.
Runes, I did not study them, but I have cards with runes.
Right.
A lot of different. I can do cartomancy, Lenormand, Oracle, Tarot. Like there's just so much. It's just intuitive. I can't really pinpoint what it is, but I've heard a lot of people say that I read very differently.
Yeah, it's it like
Yeah.
I said, I think a lot of and there's nothing wrong with this, but I
No,
think
no,
a
no.
lot of the readers that I used to watch and stuff before I found
Mhm,
your channel were very systematic. Like this is the spread, this is where they go, this is what they mean is very like logical,
mhm.
not as much just sort of like feeling it, right? It was very
Yeah.
like systematical.
Mhm.
Um not that they weren't accurate or good or anything.
No,
It's just different.
absolutely.
It feels like the way you read is more uh like flowy.
Yes, I freestyle it. I
Yeah.
I
That's
don't
if you ever do a reading where you actually freestyle, that would be JJ's dropping an album.
There you go. You know what? Jokes aside, everybody always tells me that I should, but no, that'd be interesting though. And if I do, I'll be the first one to tell you, you and your
Okay.
wife.
I could see you doing like maybe guided meditations and stuff. That would be cool,
I
you
do them
know?
on Patreon.
Oh, do you? Oh,
Yeah,
see? I
I've done
didn't know
some
that.
there. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yes, but
Um,
no, I don't like spreads. I feel like they're too restricting. And I'm
yeah.
more of like, I don't fit in a box. I don't fit in a label. Don't put me in a label because
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm a little bit more than just a tarot reader or a Reiki healer. Yeah, so that's why I don't do spreads because I'm like, I don't know. They don't.
Yeah, it's like when I was writing like a small description, right? Because I'm in the
Mhm,
middle of like wrapping up my website because I had to change the name and everything.
mhm,
And I was writing description and I started to write it. And I can't tell you how many times as I was writing it, even reading your own description, I kept hearing
mhm.
in my head, like, I'm a lot more than this. Like
Yeah.
this is what I have to put out there because I have to show something to the world. Like this is who
Yes.
I am. But like, you're so much more than that that it doesn't even do it
Yeah.
justice.
Exactly.
And so I kept hearing that, and it was making me chuckle because I'm like, I
Yeah.
know this, right? But I
Mhm.
have to put something down too,
Yes. Yes,
right?
because people like labels. Let's be
Yes,
honest. People like labels and things that they cannot understand or they cannot fit in a box.
right,
You know, people don't sometimes don't take it well. So
right,
that's why me too. When I put a description out there, I'm like, well, I have to put I'm a tarot reader, or I
yeah.
have to put this so people can, yeah.
I love the intuition stuff though that you're talking about because again, we talked about it earlier, right? You a siren
Mhm.
goes by, you're like, I feel like this is really urgent. Like I love that
Mhm.
you just like pull like what's going around. You know, before I did this podcast last night, my wife
Mhm.
goes, "You know, you have to wear my grandfather's ring when you do this podcast, right?" And I said, "I know. I already heard it. I already planned on doing it." And then I was actually doing some energy cleansing in here before
Mhm.
we started,
Mhm.
and I heard, "Don't forget about the ring." I'm like, "I know. Like I'm aware, right?" I
Yeah.
have I have a little bit of all like all the clairs, I would say,
Oh,
but
nice.
I haven't tried to really focus in and like really grow any of them. It's just
Mhm.
stuff I just like stuff happens or it doesn't,
Yeah.
if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Mhm. Yes.
But this particular ring, which I will show you, and it's going to cause
It's so beautiful.
it's a Freemason ring.
Oh, and you know what?
Eh,
I kid you not. Okay, kid you not. I was getting ready. I was blow drying my hair, and I kept getting Freemason, and I was like, "Yeah, I know my dad. I know my dad." But I was like, "What about my dad? Why is that coming up?" And now you're mentioning it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my wife's grandfather was a
Uh-huh.
Freemason. And her mom was going to like donate. She was like, "Oh, we found this old jewelry or
Mhm.
whatever." And she's like, "We're just going to drop it off at Goodwill." and we were there at her mom's house, and I said, "What is it?" And she's like, she brought it in, she showed it to me, and I said, "You can't get rid of that." And I said, "I don't care whether it's Freemason or not." I'm like, "That is so super cool. It has like a lot of like it's handcrafted, you can tell." And
Yes.
I said, "This is the first time this has really ever happened to me." I held it and I started to get a ton of information about it and about her grandfather. So I started to
Mm.
tell her about it and she was confirming it, like, "Oh yeah." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Well, that's interesting." And then um, I had a reading from someone local here who's a medium, and they said, when you really want to sit down and like get things done in your business, you
Mhm.
need to wear that ring. Like when it's time to do work, you need
Mhm.
to wear this ring because it's the ring of a builder. Like it's a
Absolutely.
builder's ring. And
Mhm.
so I've done that. Occasionally I get like smoke. He was a smoker. I'll smell smoke.
Mhm.
And now when I'm not wearing the ring and I smell smoke, I'm like, "I know." Like, it's when I'm
Yeah.
procrastinating something, I'm
Yeah.
like, I'll
Mhm.
smell it and I'm like, I feel like he's standing over my shoulder, like, "You realize that you should be doing this instead of
You
this,
should be
right?" "Yes,
working.
I know.
Yes.
I'm aware."
Mhm. Yeah.
Right? Um, so yeah, it's been interesting. So, like, I
That's so
have an
cool.
easy time connecting with stuff like that. It just seems to flow.
Mhm.
But I have a hell of a time around connecting with my guides. Like I know people, maybe I do it and I just don't know it. But like
Mhm.
I know people who are like, "Oh yeah, I know my guides. These are their names. This is what they look like." All that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I There's a guide that I connected to that once I realized my friend Jody, who was the medium, told me about it, and I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh my god, that makes so much sense." His name though, she goes, "His name is Trigger Happy Jackie," and I was like, "What?" And
So
she's like, "Yeah,
interesting.
he's like got a really good sense of humor. He's like a little cowboy that sits on your shoulder, and
Mhm.
like is just like the like old school Western, like Clint
Mhm.
Eastwood kind of badass, whatever." And
Mhm.
I'm like, I love Westerns. So I'm like, all right, that kind of makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And and so she told me that name, which I was like, oh my God. I'm like, but I almost thought like, who names these guides, right? Like that's ridiculous. It sounds so silly, right?
And that's the thing, we give them names too. Like, I feel like they give us names because, again, we wanna put things in a box.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't pick up my guides like that
So how
at
does
all.
that like how do you connect with your guides and is there like tips you can give to help people maybe try to connect with theirs? Because it's something I struggle with. Like a typical meditation, people tell me, "Well, just meditate on your guides and they'll come to you." And I'm like, "I don't think you like I
It's
can't
the same.
sit and meditate like this
Yeah,
quietly
no.
in a corner and
No,
and
no,
sit lotus position. I can't do it.
no.
I meditate if I'm moving, like if I walk,
Yes. Mhm.
or I get a lot of stuff in the shower.
Yes, because you're connected to water. Water is a conduit for spirit. Yes.
Yeah, I have a lot of
Mhm.
earth and water in my chart, and when I'm around those things, I seem to get a lot of information or like solutions and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But if I sit, I can't do it. My brain is so overactive most of the time that
Mhm.
if I sit and it's quiet, then my brain goes, "Finally."
Let's fill in the gaps.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Now's my time to
Yeah, to shine right there.
yeah. Yeah, but like so yeah, what
Yeah.
is that like, what does it feel like? I don't know. I feel like everybody's experience is a little different. So I just want to kind of like hear about how you do it. And
Yeah.
I know that you sometimes give, guidance in your readings of how people can do it. But
Yes.
like, I mean, what does it even feel like for you? Like, how do you know? Or does
For
it just
me
happen?
for me, at the beginning, it would just happen.
Mhm.
And usually does, because 'cause I'm a person, you said it yourself. And I always say it, anything that happens in a reading is for the people in the reading, whoever's
Mhm.
receiving the reading. So, like you said, I pick up from here, there was to be a crow in my window, I would be like, "That's important. Listen
Mhm.
to that." Um, so when I connect with my guides is I write a letter. I communicate with them. I'm like, "I wanna talk." And when I used to start at the beginning, because I could never meditate.
Yeah.
I'm not the person that would just sit there also and just, like, quiet my mind. That was not gonna happen. I have Mercury in Virgo. It's not gonna happen. So what I would do is I would write. I would write and I would automatic write. So I would
Okay.
just let it. And you will see it on Instagram. I'll be like, "Oh, this came through," and I wrote it down and then I'll transcribe it. So that's the way I connect with them. But I'm very clairsentient. So usually what happens is I'll get chills. That's the first thing. And I know who's my guide depending on the side of the body that I'm getting my chills from.
Okay.
So if they're coming from the left side, then I know that's my higher self, or that is as well as any of my other spiritual guides. If it's from my right side, then I'm like, it's from my ancestors.
Oh.
Yeah. And I also, another tip for you guys to connect with your guides would be, tell them, ask them to give you a sign. Tell them specifically, what do you want? So if you want to
Mhm.
see a crow, tell them, I want to know you're here with me. I want to see crows. And they'll show you them.
Mhm.
Yeah, they will. Or you can ask them for names. Some people like to know the names. So go ahead and ask them and see one name. Oh, cute. To
Sorry,
see what
she's
name popped up constantly. Maybe all of a sudden you're going to hear a lot of clients named Tony, or you're going to
mhm.
hear on the radio, oh, Tony again, or this, oh, my friend Tony. And you're like, oh, Tony's popping up. And we forget. That's why it's important to journal, because we're
Right.
like, why is that name popping up? But we forgot that we asked what was their name. So always
It's
remember that.
interesting. Yeah, well, and,
Mhm.
like,
That's how I connect with them. I don't know.
but it's interesting to me that, it's such a simple thing, and maybe that's the problem, right? Is a lot of
We're
people, probably
overthinking.
including myself, overthinker,
Mhm.
just overcomplicates it instead of
Yes.
just asking, right?
Mhm.
Um, I do know that there's been times, I don't know if you've ever done this, but it's pretty fun.
Mhm.
I like to play with spirit, if that makes sense.
Hey, keep it
And
fun.
yeah, and so there's times
Yeah.
where I've gotten into my car and I
Mhm.
know that my playlist on Spotify is gonna shuffle
Mhm.
or whatever, right? Or
Yes.
like iTunes,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
I'll say, "Okay, I want guidance on this.
Yes.
Show it to me in the music." And a lot of times, I mean, I've tested this, okay,
Yes.
where I'll get a song title, not necessarily the words, but just the title, and I'll literally start hitting the button to flip through the songs and let it
Mhm.
go skip ahead, and I've gotten full sentences,
It's
almost like
insane.
paragraphs
Yes.
that I can apply, and I was like, "Oh, that's so cool." And the people I know who are into this kind of stuff, I said, I know it's the way it works.
Mhm.
I know that I'm able to tap into it, and I said, "But every time it happens, I'm still a kid." I'm like, "This is the coolest
Absolutely.
thing ever."
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you see me on my readings, I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, I was just talking about this," and the card comes out, and I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh my god, I said it!" Like, you're that little kid that you're like, "I can't believe it," you know? "I
Yeah.
picked up on this before." You still get shocked, and I do the same thing with the music shuffle. That's a perfect way. Some people use a book. You get a book, like a
Just
book like
flip.
this. Yeah, and you're like, "Okay, I want guidance on this," and then you turn the page, and then
Mhm.
you read, and there's your answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
Sorry,
there's
Mike.
a lot that you can do, and, my favorite is always music. That's
Mhm.
my favorite. Yeah, I'm a
Yeah,
music
it's really
person, girl.
fun. I
Mhm.
don't know what possessed me to try it one time, but I did, and I was like, "Oh my god,
Your
it's actually
guides did.
working." Like, yeah, I was kinda like,
Yeah.
"Holy crap." Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I do get a lot of stuff from music, and then, animal guides a lot, a
Absolute
lot. I
animal
have
totems.
That's
Yes.
actually my, I think you have the deck, actually. I'm
I
trying
have
to
so
think.
many.
I have,
Animals?
is it Crayons? Last name Crayons?
Um,
Krans?
it's not the one from Colette Baron Reed?
No, I
No,
can't
the one
remember.
that has, like, a deer in the front? No.
No, it is, hold on, sorry. Let me look.
'Cause that's another thing. Anyone who wants to connect with your guides, a lot of people think like it has to be a formal thing.
Yep.
Like it has to be a ritualistic thing, or it has to be done in a certain way. Look at your guides as like your friend. Like
Mhm.
enjoy it. You don't have to be so serious about it. You can have fun with them, but you have to invite them in, because we always say this is free will. And if you don't invite them in, they're not going to step in. I mean, they're going to be there like watching, but they need your.
I totally just dumped cards all over the back.
Oh, yes. Yes,
It's
yes,
the
animal
animal
spirit.
spirit.
Uh-huh. From the
Was
wild
I right?
unknown?
I was close. It was Krans, not Z, but,
Yeah,
um,
from the wild unknown creator, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
I love this deck so
Oh,
much.
me too.
I connect with animals quite well, as
Me
my
too.
cat is literally walking back and she's cold because she has no hair. Um, she's like, "Dad, I'm freezing." Um, but yeah, I really love this one a lot, and a lot of times when I've pulled cards from it,
Mhm.
I've seen whatever that animal is,
Yes.
like, out in the wild and things too, which has been really cool.
Yes,
And
I love animal totems. My dad, when I was little, he gave me the first book he ever gave me was a book of just the animals, like all the animals of the world. And I remember I will love that book. And till this day, I when I see an animal, I'm like, oh, they're talking about this, they're talking about that.
do you
For
have
real.
pets?
Huh? No,
Do
I
you have any
don't,
pets?
because like I
No.
live in an apartment. We're not allowed to.
Oh,
I know.
I was curious if you were if you had pets. Are you more of a dog or a cat person?
I like both,
Yeah.
but a German Shepherd. My son will
Really?
kill me if you didn't say. My son will be like, "Mom, you always wanted one." Yes, a German Shepherd. I had one when I was little. I had two actually.
Well, just to give you some confirmation, literally right before I jumped on here, as I was working on my other business, we were doing a design for somebody for a promotion called Donuts for Dogs, and it's not what it sounds like. They're actually soap. It's for a soap
Okay.
company, and the soap
Uh-huh.
looks like a donut and it smells
Uh-huh.
like a donut. But
Mhm.
a dollar of every soap sold goes to the local canine unit at the police station.
Oh.
And the image that we made
Uh-huh.
for everything actually has a German Shepherd on it.
No!
So so that's pretty cool.
And you know what's so cool that I always said that my German Shepherd, I'm gonna get it trained
Yeah.
by the canine unit. Yeah.
I so I know somebody.
Mhm.
If you don't know where to get one, I can
Uh-huh.
probably help you because one of the actually he was on the third podcast I did about crystals. One of
Uh-huh.
my good friends that's in my community, his name's Wally. He's a
Uh-huh.
professional animal trainer, and he's worked with like big
Oh.
animals like
Mhm.
lions and tigers and like big cats and stuff. But he's
Okay.
a dog trainer by trade,
Oh,
and he
okay.
probably knows of like good places. He's out in North Carolina. He probably knows
Okay.
good connections, to find like really good trained, you know,
Dogs.
pets. So
Nice. Thank
yeah,
you. Yes, I will reach out when I'm ready because I'm in the process of hopefully by the end of the year I should be able
look,
to have one. Oh, I love that confirmation.
isn't that funny? I
Yes.
was literally like a half an hour before we jumped on here.
See,
I
that's
was
my animal spirit being like, she's coming in.
yeah, very protective.
Yes.
Let me see. I want to talk about how to book services with you too.
Okay.
But I want to. Can I pull a card for you?
Go ahead.
I want to show you this deck because it's hilarious. This is my
Okay, go
favorite deck
ahead.
of all time. Have you ever heard of the Rebel deck?
Oh, yeah, I have 2 copies of it, yes, and
This is
I would love to use it on YouTube, but it's too YouTube is very, like, you can't say bad words, so yeah.
it's my favorite deck. When I was doing Twitch streaming, this is the
Uh-huh.
deck that I used because it's like my wife said this too. She's like, "That's my personality in a deck," and I'm like, "Mine too." Like,
Yeah.
it's really funny. I'm a little nervous. I'm like, "Is this gonna
What?
just tell you something really horrible?"
It's okay, I don't take it personal, go ahead.
All right, I'll
Go
pull a
ahead. If
card
it needs
for
to
you.
call me out, it'll call me out, don't worry about it. Don't
But
worry.
I the thing that I liked about it was, the people who were coming by,
Mhm.
I was actually just, like, amazed, at how many times, something would come out and they're like, "Mm." They're like, "I needed to hear that,"
Yeah,
and it just
yeah.
seemed
That's kinda
very
like
spot
twin
on.
flame energy.
Yeah.
Like, you don't wanna hear it, but this is what you need.
Yeah. Well, see, and that's the thing, like I said, I'm pretty blunt
Yeah.
usually, like, to a fault in a
Capricorn
way.
is.
I hurt my
Mhm,
wife's feelings sometimes because
mhm.
I'm too blunt with what I'm saying, like, there's not
Yeah.
enough maybe compassion in the delivery because it just comes out before I have a chance to, like, do you know
Think
what I
it
mean?
before yeah.
Yeah, like, I almost need to shut up and just think about it for about, like, 30 seconds before I say it, but
Mhm.
I'm used to just kinda dumping it out there, so my cat is helping, she just nudged
Aw.
the deck. Okay, and we got a jumper.
What is it?
It
Okay, is that
says
what does
it
it
says,
say?
"Whatever you're thinking about, don't do it.
Oh,
Now is not the fucking time."
there we go. I was just thinking, like, because you keep saying Twitch, and my son keeps telling me, Mom, he's been telling me for the past year to open Twitch.
Yeah.
Open a Twitch, and I'm like, I don't think it's time yet. I don't think it's time yet. And the card comes up.
Well, there you go. I will say,
Mhm.
like, I think this is selfishly,
Mhm.
um, I would love to see you on Twitch because I think it would be fun.
Aw.
And it's cool to interact with people when it's live and everything.
Mhm.
It would definitely probably take you a little out of your comfort zone because there's no
Yeah,
editing, right? It's just it's all
absolutely.
what you get.
I think Imma have to
Um,
come to you to guide me because I have no idea how to work that.
yeah. Yeah, it's a little crazy, but it's fun. It's definitely fun. But I feel like you haven't really even scratched the surface with YouTube yet, truly. Like,
Ah,
that sounds weird to say because
yeah.
I'm like, "Holy crap, you have over 47,000 followers," which is just insane to me, okay?
Thank you.
Um, but I feel like I feel like you're gonna hit 100K.
I want to. That's my goal. That's my
Like,
goal.
is it your goal to hit it this year?
Yes, my goal was to hit it this year.
I heard that before we did the podcast.
Oh,
I,
that's
like, looked at it and I
amazing.
thought, "You're gonna hit 100K this year."
Oh, that would be great because because I've been wanting to. That's like one of my that's my own personal kinda like, "Okay,
Yeah.
you made it good on YouTube," you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, listen, if you wanna compare subscriptions or followers or whatever, I can boost your ego really, really well. So, I'm just saying, things
Whenever I'm
change with perspective, right?
Yes.
Like, you're like, "God, I remember when I only had, like, 50 bucks in the bank," and then it's like, "Oh my god, do you remember when I only had 50 bucks in the bank?" Like, that kinda stuff. You're like, "47, man, I really feel like I could do better." I feel like you're wired like I am, where I always wanna do better, I always,
Mhm. That's a
but
Capricorn in me. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, me too.
Mhm.
But I think that, um so in the marketing business, right, and in
Mhm.
entrepreneurship, a lot of times what a business coach would say is find that one thing that like you're really, really good at and that's your niche and don't expand too much outside of that until you know that you've really tapped out that one thing. And I feel like you haven't really even scratched the surface with YouTube. It might feel like it, but I
Mhm.
feel like you haven't because with so many people, uh waking up and seeking things, like your
Mhm.
audience, the audience available to come find you is huge, right?
Yeah.
It's just a matter of getting in front of them in some way. And as a marketing guy, yeah, you can
Mhm.
get in front of people organically, to a point. Sometimes you have to pay to play depending on the platform.
Yeah.
But I think using some of those other things to get people to your YouTube, like TikTok is a great one.
Yes.
Just because there's so many eyeballs on it, right?
Yeah.
um, to funnel people to that to grow that, right?
Mhm.
And because you have an endless amount of content there at this point.
Mhm.
And every most people know this, right? And you talk about this a lot, but it's all quantum. The first
Mhm.
couple of readings I ever saw of yours were not recent readings. They were maybe a year old or something like
Mhm.
that, right? But they were dead on for what I was going through, and that happens a
Yeah.
lot, right?
Yes.
So, if you think about that, you have this whole library of content on YouTube that is you've been creating over the last couple of years, and there's
Mhm.
a ridiculous amount of people who, when they find you for the first time, are going to get exactly what they need, regardless of how old that is, because it's
Mhm.
timeless.
Yes.
So 47 may feel like a lot. It's it's tiny in the
Mhm.
grand scheme of things. It's tiny. So
Yes.
I think you're gonna hit. I really do. I think you're gonna hit 100K this year.
Thank you. If
So
I do, I'll come to you.
okay,
I'll be like, "We'll celebrate with your wife."
yeah, there you go. There you go. So talk about that being said. Let's talk
Mhm.
about how people can get. I guess first, tell me. I know you do different readings, right?
Yes.
And I know this because I've gotten them myself, so I know what you do. But to the
Thank
people
you.
listening, tell us how they can find you, how they can schedule things, what you offer.
Yes.
How can we support you other than obviously liking and subscribing on YouTube?
So I also have a Patreon. I have Instagram. I do have TikTok as well,
Mhm.
and soon I will be having my podcast as well.
Oh,
So yeah, I'm so
sweet.
excited. Thank you. I have you over on my
Sure.
podcast. Thank you. But you can find my services on my website, which is JJ's Constellation with an S, jjsconstellation.com. And I have different types of services. I have readings, meet your guides readings. I have the year ahead reading, which comes from December all the way till January of every year.
Mhm.
I also have one question, two question, three question readings. I have past life readings. And right now I have twin flame readings as well. I also do Reiki. I have oils. I have candles. I have decks. And I have t shirts. I have t-shirts as well. that I have not put out, but they will be going up very, very soon. I also have usually I have classes and webinars as well. They're always in my website, jjsconstellation.com. Mhm.
Your classes that you have, are
Yeah.
they like if I were to sign up with them, today, do I get access to like a course and I can go through that at my own pace, or is it stuff that you're sort of like, okay, we're going to do a class on this day and it has to be live?
Yes, but they are all recorded and they are
Mhm.
sent out. So, because I do have clients that they're from different parts of the world and the timing doesn't work for them.
Yeah.
So I do have a set time and date,
Mhm.
and I'm there in front of the class and I'm answering questions and everything. So we're engaging and I'm recording. And then if for whatever reason you cannot make it, I will send the recording out to you. Regardless whether you're there, you still get the recording for you to revisit the information again. Mhm.
Do people then get access to the previous information too, or no?
It depends.
Okay.
For my tarot courses, yes, they did get a PDF
Mhm.
with kind of like bullet points of what I was going to be touching on, and for them to have as like a reference book, if you will.
Uh-huh.
A lot of them created like a folder or a binder with that information. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've talked to a lot of people about creating like content courses where, let's say you have a 12 video series where you're going to start at this point and end at this point and teach something, and
Hmm.
that content is evergreen and exists out there, and whether I sign up for that now or I sign up that from a year from now, I can still learn that thing at that time and go
Hmm.
through the content, and it's something that you create one time and then it can
Hmm.
continue to help and produce, obviously income if you're selling it
Absolutely. Yeah.
without you having to do any more work at that point. It's like almost automated, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think, especially if you're doing that kind of stuff, I think that's gonna become a big thing too, obviously. And you clearly have some like education teaching. I mean, you're like a natural teacher.
Thank you.
So yeah, I
Thank you.
definitely think I think that's gonna blow up and be a good thing too. But
Thank
yeah,
you.
I feel like YouTube, like I said, I know it seems um, like, oh, maybe I need to expand on these other like places to grow. And I
Mhm.
think it's a good idea to do that in order to funnel things, right? This is my
Yeah.
marketing
Absolutely.
brain.
Hmm.
But I think that YouTube is where like that's right now, that's your bread and butter, like where everything is.
Hmm.
So it's very helpful to do that. I do think like little collective readings and little pick a cards and stuff like I've
Hmm.
been seeing you do on like Reels and TikTok. I think that is going to be extremely good. That was actually something that when I was streaming on Twitch last year and I first jumped on TikTok, I was
Hmm.
like, should do just short little things like a daily poll or something like that on TikTok. I
Yeah.
never explored it because I have a million other things that I want to do,
Hmm.
for making a living, and it's not that, but I do enjoy it. Um,
Absolutely.
but yeah, that kind of stuff, I don't see much of it. I mean, there's some people doing it, but not a ton. I see a lot of people doing live, like
Oh
much like
yeah.
they would on
Hmm.
Twitch, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's really cool. But yeah, so definitely if you've never gotten a reading from JJ, I actually had another reader tell me that sometimes when you're channeling that, not a personal reading, just like general readings,
Yeah.
they're like, I really feel like she like taps into like you and your wife's energy specifically sometimes. And I was like, it certainly feels like it. Um, you know, uh, there'll be times it happened today too. There'll be times where I'll be like, man, like today, like, man, my head kind of hurts because of the sinus thing. And then
Hmm.
like as we're listening to a reading, it's like, I feel like you have headaches a lot. Like as we're talking about it,
Yeah.
right? And so like that kind of stuff happens a lot with your
Yeah, it
readings and
does.
us, like little
Mhm.
synchronicities like that.
I know.
And yeah, it's just crazy. But if you haven't had a reading one-on-one, definitely book one with JJ because they're amazing.
Thank
I
you.
watched and did pick a cards and stuff for a really, really long time before I booked one. And I was like, you know what, you provide so much um value,
Thank
for free,
thank you.
that it really made me be like, I want to give back in some way, whether that's
Thank you.
donating, whether that's scheduling a reading, whatever it is.
Mhm.
I like truly from the bottom of my heart, the last 2 years that we've been able to find your content has helped us so much. You don't even,
Thank
I
you.
couldn't even begin to explain it to you. I
Thank
mean,
you.
truly, but it really has. It's helped through a lot of stuff from, my business transition and everything that happened with that, and quitting the day job to, just everyday stuff. It's really, really, really helped us a lot personally. Like I feel like, I don't know, if I'm ever out that way or whatever, we need to
Thank
treat you and
you.
your husband to dinner or something, because
Yes.
it's
Where are you
helped
guys
so
located?
much. In Ohio?
Oh, I thought you guys were here in Cali.
Mm-mm. No, I live out
Mm.
in the middle of nowhere. Literally the population's like 6,000 people.
Oh,
It's
so it's a
very
small
small.
population. See,
It's
but I've always
small.
wanted to live in a small place.
It's nice.
It
I'm not a
is.
big city guy. It's
Me
I
neither.
empath too much, like big groups.
Yeah,
I like to kind of be away
same.
from it a little bit. But I live on the water,
Oh, that's
which not
nice.
the ocean, but I live
Mhm.
on a lake and I like it.
That's
And
pretty.
yeah, it's a good mix of earth and water here for sure. We have a lot of really, actually. So on the 21st, we're going to a place called Hocking Hills in Ohio, which if you ever look it up, it
Mhm.
reminds you of the woods in like Lord of the Rings. Like it's a very
Oh.
ancient Native American like forest,
Oh,
and they have cabins and like trails and caves and all kinds of stuff. And so like that's my happy place. I want to build a cabin out
aw.
there somewhere.
You will.
Um, but yeah, it's really it's just a good spot. The weather, it's like
Mhm.
Florida here,
Oh,
probably
okay.
I don't know, 6, 7 months out of the year. And then it's really cold the rest of the time, but you get all 4 seasons, you get some water, you get some woods,
That's good.
it's
So it's
yeah.
just balanced.
Yeah, exactly. It's very
No,
balanced.
that's good. That's
Um,
important.
yeah, it's nice. But I know like my wife loves to travel. I'm nervous to travel.
Okay.
Um, not because of anything going. I just have a fear of flying, generally speaking.
Oh, okay, okay.
But my son really wants to go to California. He's a foodie. And so he
Ah,
like wants to
okay.
go hit up like Gordon Ramsay's stuff and go eat at
Ah,
all the different
okay.
restaurants. And he's a California kid in his heart for sure. And
Okay.
my wife would probably love it just because it's not in the middle of nowhere in a cornfield, which is like pretty much where I live now, right? She's a city girl at heart too.
Yeah.
But yeah, it would
But
be
if you
great
guys
to
are
try to
ever
go that way.
here, tell your wife if she's ever here, just let me know.
Yeah, I definitely will. But
Yeah.
I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me,
Thank
and
you.
I'm going to be excited to look back on this episode being the first one under the new sort of energy and the new whatever, and then look
Yes.
back at it and be like, "Oh my god." Because I mean, you've done readings, right? If
Yes.
if it if it grows into when it grows into,
Mhm.
right,
Mhm.
what it's
Yes.
meant to be, um, I'm gonna love to be able to look back and be like, "Yeah, JJ signed up to do a podcast with me, and there's only like 20 people that even listen to it." Right? And so, like, I
Yeah.
appreciate that because
Yeah.
there's a lot of people that probably wouldn't have come on because 'cause they're like, "Well, it's not gonna like, what am I getting? I'm not getting exposure. I'm not like, I'm thankful that
Mhm.
you're giving me your time so that we could have
Oh,
a
you're
conversation,
welcome. You're
um,
welcome. And
and
I
talk
don't
about
do
this stuff."
things, and you're gonna see that. If you ever see some of my collaborate some of the times I collaborate with one person, I didn't know who they were, how
Uh-huh.
big they were in the community until after the fact, like a year after I collaborated with them. But
Right?
I don't go and like search people up and be like, "Oh, what do you have to?" No,
Yeah.
I don't. I just feel I'm like, if I like it, I'm like, how interesting that he's offering me again because I know you offered me the last time, but it got
Yeah.
really busy
Yeah, yeah.
and then I was like, it's interesting now that I'm thinking about opening my own podcast. He invited me in. So I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay. But it's never about like what am I gonna get or anything like that.
Yeah,
No.
no, and I know that, but it's
Yeah.
just I appreciate it because I think a lot of people would be like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" Like, other than the fact that I got some readings from you, like, who, what, right? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, and I think like me, you probably do things based on intuition and the energy,
Absolutely. Hmm.
and so yeah, I'm like, I could care. I'll go. I'll talk to anybody. It
Exactly.
doesn't matter, you
Yeah.
know.
You never know how that's
So
gonna change your life, actually. Just maybe a conversation, something that you
yeah,
say at that moment or you hear, and
yeah.
you're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my hope is that anybody who listens to this, whether it's in the next week when it gets released, or if it's
Mhm.
10 years from now and you're just coming back to listen to it, that somehow something that was said or discussed helps you in some way,
Absolutely.
and that you're able to find some kind of meaning or healing or
Mhm.
guidance or whatever. and that you definitely check out JJ. And yeah, she is incredible. You're an incredible
Thank you.
human being. Seriously.
Thank you. So are you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And yeah, I appreciate you spending time with me.
Thank you. I appreciate you too. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome.